Welcome to the Beyond Vision podcast, where we focus on the human side of advanced eye care. Join us in exploring the way we approach our collective pursuit of excellence. In each episode, we'll uncover the inspiring stories of how our vision, mission, and core values shape the way we love and care for each other and our patients. Hear from our passionate team and discover what sets Vance Thompson Vision apart in the world of advanced eye care.
Hello, my name is Sarah Dannen, today's host of the Beyond Vision podcast, a podcast from Vance Thompson Vision, aimed to show that we are beyond just patient care and taking care of our patients day in and day out. We are here to enrich the lives of all that we touch each and every single day. Today's guest needs no introduction. He is our founder. He is our namesake, Dr. Vance Thompson.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Yes. Well, my intro alluded to the fact that you need no introduction. For those that may be listening that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about who Dr. Thompson is?
Yeah, so I grew up in South Dakota. My father was a small-town family physician, my mother a homemaker. My mother had grown up in Sioux Falls, my father in Watertown, and I spent the first half of my childhood in Lake Andes, South Dakota. My dad was on call every night, and the Gregory doctor was on call every night, and they decided to join forces. We moved to Gregory, South Dakota. So small town upbringing in South Dakota helped really mold and shape me. I then after high school went to the University of South Dakota. That's where I met Jana, my wife, and got a degree in chemistry. Went to medical school there. Interned here in Sioux Falls at Avera, went to the University of Missouri, Columbia for my training in ophthalmology, then did a fellowship in advanced refractive and cataract surgery in Kansas City, then came back to Sioux Falls in 1991 and started my practice. And we have 3 children who are now grown up and 3 grandchildren and a 4th on the way.
Wow.
And 2 wonderful daughter-in-laws, and I'm honored to be a part of this practice that has grown from little to big.
Oh, awesome. You know, when I was prepping for this interview, I was like, what do our listeners really want to hear? And what should we focus on? And my thoughts led to, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to where it started, and let's talk about the history and how we got to where we are today. So you mentioned that you grew up in Lake Andes in Gregory, South Dakota. What was it like growing up in a small town?
Well, I thought the world centered around small town South Dakota. I absolutely loved where I grew up, and still some of my best friends in life are from those communities. And we'd spend a lot of time outdoors. That was a time where you'd get on your bike and you'd be gone for the day and playing baseball, doing whatever, fishing, and then you'd come home in the evening, when your parents said to be home, and it was simple, but it was just so powerful and helped mold and shape me. I remember telling my mother in the 8th grade that I knew that when I didn't know what I was going to be, but I want to live in South Dakota, when I'm an adult, but it just was something that I have such positive memories of, that I knew I wanted it to be my kind of forever place.
Yeah, I always knew I didn't want to be farther than like a day's drive or be able to get back to my parents to see them. So I get the wanting to come back or live and be in South Dakota. Going back to that childhood and your mother, what would she say Vance was like as a kid?
Well, I was always someone who, she said, cared a lot. And sometimes she worried I cared a little too much. I remember something that she said to me as she was even on her last day on this earth, that just remember, Vance, that this world will not treat you as good as you treat it. And I was, to tell you the truth, I was comfortable with that.
Wow.
There's something that I find in caring deeply for people that just really has been ever since I can remember. And so I was always caring with I feel a positive attitude, and I found joy in the little things and still do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really moved by other people. And so I sometimes feel I was either a little grown up then, or I'm a big kid now. I mean, it just seems like I haven't changed a lot, maybe a titch more refined,
Mm-hmm.
but not much.
I'm going to pull on that question a little bit more, because I think it's important, and I think our listeners would want to know, because we do things differently at Vance Thompson Vision, and you have such a servant heart, and you do care deeply about everyone and everything that you touch. Where do you think that came from? Is that something your mother instilled, or where did that kind of caring personality come from? Because it's not in everybody.
Right. I think it had to do with the home.
Mm-hmm.
Both my parents were very open arms for outsiders. Sometimes we'd have people in need living with us. We definitely had our relatives visiting a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and friends, and they taught us to, treat all people equal,
Mm-hmm.
and to really find joy in others. And so our home was always one where other people were coming through, and for some reason it just was something that really moved me. I mean, I would get really excited for, family get-togethers
Mm-hmm.
and friends coming over, and so I've always had this kind of maybe hospitality side that they taught and lived, and it's been something that's meant a lot to me to this day. I remember my mother growing up in Sioux Falls. We would come every month to visit my relatives.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of cousins and aunts and uncles here, and my cousins were like brothers and sisters, and so this idea of joy, of gatherings, and
Yeah.
we loved, the kitchen, cooking together, and doing things together, and so, finding joy in others. I think it's literally one of the most powerful energies on what I like to call Mother Earth.
Yeah.
I even think of the power of a mother's love. When I was building, my practice, I even used that as, if I can have the trust of a mother to work on their child,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be okay, because I think it's the most protective force on Mother Earth, is a mother's love, and if your business has the trust of mothers, you're going to have the trust of others.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. The trust of mothers and the trust of others. Switching gears to your father a little bit, you mentioned that he was a family doctor in Lake Andes and then later in Gregory. How influential was he in you becoming a doctor?
Well, he was very influential in my life in general. He was a big guy. He was a 300-pounder that was quite muscular, and so I always felt safe around him, unless I was in trouble. But he was well respected in the communities, and he loved taking care of people, had a lot of great common sense. And so that I found really attractive, how he was so well respected in our communities. My grandfather was a physician also in Watertown.
Okay.
And both family doctors, and both played a big role in me wanting to be a doctor. And also I had an uncle who was a neurosurgeon, my mother's brother. So medicine was already strong in my family. But I have to admit that for a while it was an expectation that I carried a little, maybe too heavily, because I'll never forget the, Christmas of my sophomore year of college. I'm at home in Gregory, and I'm telling my father, I think I want to go into business. And I feel like there's been all this pressure for me to be a doctor.
Right.
And he said, well, son, I don't remember ever saying you should be a doctor. He says, as a matter of fact, I think you should think about other things. There's a lot of change in medicine, a lot of pressures, and maybe you should consider going into business. And I felt all this pressure come off me, and we started looking at business courses. And then I'll never forget getting to the edge of Vermilion with my registrar slip that was going to be all business classes, and thinking, I want to be a doctor.
Oh.
I mean, the pressure had been put on by myself.
Yes.
And it really freed me to do what I feel like I was naturally meant to do, to care for people. And there's really not too many examples of more powerful ways to care for people than through their medical and surgical care.
Right. Your grandfather was a family doctor and your dad was a family doctor. Why aren't you a family doctor? Why are you an ophthalmologist?
Yeah. Well, so when I went to medical school, I thought I was going to be a family doctor in small town South Dakota. I was really at peace with that, excited about that. And then in one of my medical school rotations, I was in Yankton, South Dakota, following Dr. Wilcoxon and Dr. King. And I got to see Dr. Wilcoxon in clinic and then do surgery. That was the first eye surgery I ever watched. And then I got to see the patient the next day. And the whole thing, when I watched him do microsurgery and what you could see of the eye through a microscope, it was like a whole nother world. Even looking at the iris, how velvety, it looked like the surface of another planet. Mm-hmm. And to see that patient the next day and the joy that he had brought to their life, I literally heard the angels sing. It was the first time in my journey that I felt inspired. And I was so inspired that I was worried that, wow, this is so amazing. What if I don't get in? Or and I had a plan B, and I think that would have been great too. But I ended up getting in, and ended up starting a journey that was real pivotal for me.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that journey. That journey took you to more advanced training and then back to Sioux Falls to start your practice. You mentioned you wanted to get back to South Dakota. Why did you land in Sioux Falls?
Well, my mother's family was here, and we would visit it every month growing up, and I, fell in love with Sioux Falls. And I, didn't know exactly, what I was going to be, but I had an idea when in my training that, I just was really hoping that we could end up here. And in my training, I'm now married, and my wife, who I'd met at USD, had grown up in Iowa, so we wouldn't be too far from her parents too. So we really fairly early on settled on the idea of coming to Sioux Falls. And a lot of the ophthalmologists in this community were amazing mentors for me, like Dr. Byron Holm and Dr. Dick Cheddar and Ken Augsburger, and I could go on with the names in this community of great eye surgeons who were instrumental in kind of taking me under their wing. And we had a string of ophthalmologists who had trained at the University of Missouri-Columbia, and I'll never forget the beautiful letter of recommendation Dr. Holm did for me. He helped set me up with a rotation down there, and I went there for my residency, and it was a great experience, and we now, had 2 little boys, and then I fell in love with the front of the eye, this idea of working on the lens and the cornea, the focusing elements of the eye. I applied for a fellowship, and it wasn't just any fellowship. I just will never forget, I was at my first big eye meeting and had learned about this laser called the excimer laser that was being researched to potentially treat nearsightedness and astigmatism and help people see without glasses. And I really wanted to learn about that laser. And so I applied for a fellowship that had that laser in Kansas City. World leaders in refractive and cataract surgery research And my fellowship directors were John Hunkler in cataract surgery and Dan Dury in refractive surgery. And I went on and did that fellowship, and it was absolutely amazing how much it changed my journey. But at the end of that fellowship, we still had this single-mindedness, even though I had all these offers to go all around the world, because laser vision was so fresh and we had just done been part of amazing research, but we still wanted to come back here. And I actually really felt like I wanted to live here more than maybe even see how high my star could go elsewhere. This was how much I really wanted to be here. And probably one of the most exciting parts of my life is realizing that, hey, coming back to South Dakota, with this world being really a small place, especially how connected it is these days, that your star can be as high as you want it to be anywhere, including here.
Oh, amen. I don't think we realize, us mere mortals here in South Dakota, just how lucky we are that, the pioneering that you did back then with the laser and your training and deciding to hang your star here to make it rise really is a gift to all of us that are here, because I don't think we realize that we get those gifts each and every day. So thank you. When you came back to Sioux Falls, describe your early practice.
Yeah. Well, I was on Sioux Valley Hospital's campus. It's now called Sanford Health. And they treated me so well. And the first step in my journey that was real pivotal was when I finished my fellowship in Kansas City, and we had performed what was called the blind eye study of laser vision correction and other clinical research. When I came back here, there was a part of me that was a little melancholy, a little sad, that I was leaving some research that I may not see the fruits of or be able to even do the laser vision until it was FDA approved, and would it get FDA approved, and all these questions in my head and heart. And so 3 months into my practice, I get an invitation to be a part of the sighted eye trials of laser vision correction. And I was, number one, blown away because I had already experienced this in Kansas City. But number two, I was a little sad because a research program is very expensive. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea how 3 months into my practice, I'm trying to figure out how to, pay bills and buy diapers and, and rent. And so the most amazing thing happened. Byron Holm, the ophthalmologist here in Sioux Falls, who was a big mentor, said, you should talk to Sioux Valley, because I was on their campus, and he had talked to someone, and that was John Soderholm, who mm-hmm. was then very involved as a leader there, who went on to do the heart hospital. Yep. And they invited me to a board of directors meeting, and I presented to the leadership in this community on what I had experienced in laser vision and this opportunity. And I got a call at home that night after a 30-minute presentation of the risks of FDA monitored research and how I couldn't afford this but if you would be interested, we could do it together. But if it didn't get FDA approved and those sorts of things. And I get a call from John Soderholm that night, and he said, I have to tell you, I haven't seen our board moved this way, and they've voted to fund your whole project. And so, yes, it was neat to get the invitation, but there's no way I could have even began this journey without the support of a local hospital system. And mm-hmm. I think sometimes we need to pause and just appreciate these hospital systems here, Sanford and Avera, and even our VA is one of the best in the world. And so, but they really helped me in my journey, and we had the honor of participating in something that changed the world of eye surgery, and took me all around the world, presenting my research, teaching other surgeons, and helping with a movement in the eye world that ended up being something that led to other research, and I think was a big part of our growth.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to pull on that thread for a minute about risk taking. You know, they took a risk on a young doctor, and that risk paid off. You took a risk on yourself and decided to do things your own way and start Vance Thompson Vision. Tell the audience a little bit about where that risk taking comes from, or that belief in yourself that you were ready to make that journey.
Well, I believe that God, life presents opportunities for all of us, and that they're passing in front of us all the time. And it's, our job or our opportunity to recognize them as something, good in your life or not good. And so I feel like that this servant heart, and when someone would, for instance, ask me to do research, or there'd be an opportunity for growing the practice through having other people join this or that. I always had a basic belief in if it made sense, and it was in general 80%. Seeming the right thing, that yes, everything has risk, but I didn't have a hard time with taking kind of calculated risk. And I think part of it comes with the excitement and joy in what I do. And so the risk part is also the exciting part. And plus, it was so fun to grow in a way that involved others, because this idea of Vance Thompson Vision, even I wasn't looking for a new name, I wasn't looking to put my name in our name, but it was our marketing agency, Lawrence and Schiller back then, who was really wanting to help with the messaging of advanced vision surgery in our region. And they did market research, and they said, Vance, you've been doing so much, teaching to the, in Sioux Falls, in the area communities. You've been, there's been stories written about the research that you're doing. You do a lot of surgery. Our research has shown your name's been branded with eye surgery. And we suggest that you have your name be your name. And I wasn't super excited about that, to tell you the truth. And I'll never forget Dr. Doug Wallen, the first optometrist to join me, sat me down and said, Vance, you've always taught us to make, decisions based on the data.
Yeah.
And if the data says this, I think you should listen. And that was the beginning of Vance Thompson Vision, and that was in around 1994 when we made that decision. And so one thing just kind of led to another, but this idea of growing refractive and cataract surgery on a hospital's campus, ophthalmology had already become quite independent. And so it was just so amazing to me how this hospital system supported our growth right on their campus, and we just grew and grew and grew. You grew and grew until you left the hospital campus and decided to go out on your own, and you decided to do it in a way that was unprecedented, putting the team first and a patient experience unlike any other. Talk to me about that calculated risk when you were ready to take it. Well, I'd always had a philosophy that I wanted to use the world's best technology, because I knew that if I could, deliver the best technology with the most, safety and the highest accuracy, that would be super important to me and how I take care of patients. I remember times in my journey having to stop certain procedures for a little while because something was just FDA approved that was proven to be better, and I would say, patient, we need to wait for this. So advanced technology was super important to me. I also knew that I wanted to work with the best people, and so those two things were so important to me that I tried not to get fascinated with physical space, what we call the building, and I actually thought that I couldn't afford all that. I knew I needed the best people and technology, but I didn't think beyond that I could afford a better physical space. And as our practice grew and the economies of scale of people working together, and we became big enough to start, not only dreaming about a new physical space, but needing it because we were growing so much, that was super exciting to me, because I had not allowed myself to go there dreaming about a world-class physical space. So when we built our new space, and I'll never forget that first day of walking in there. We even had our pastor there who, put us in a circle, and we did a prayer as he blessed our new building. It was like I was just so thankful that now, best technology, amazing people, and now we're in an amazing building that moved all of us.
Yeah.
And I feel moved our patients.
Yeah. Let's talk more about those people, those influential best people that you have brought along with you on your journey. Aside from your family, I know there's Doctors Birdall and your fabulous fellowship program. Talk about the people that you've brought with you along the way.
Yeah. Well, the growth in our practice has been absolutely amazing. I've always felt that our practice was a good, mix of, ophthalmology and optometry. When Dr. Rasmussen joined me, that I now had what I call a really optimized practice. One that, optometry helping in clinic, and I can really focus on surgery. And I'll never forget when Matt Jensen, who was working, for so many years with me, and still does in a lot of ways, had met this Dr. Birdall, and they had went to college together at Augustana, and I'll never forget meeting, John, and just being so impressed with him, and kind of almost like a love at first sight thing, and in a way that I thought, Lord, this is that you're presenting one of those opportunities, and because I've had a lot of doctors, to tell you the truth, want to join me and us over the years, and the vast majority, we've just had to say no to, because it's a very serious decision when you decide to partner with someone. And so, but Dr. Birdall coming was just such a beautiful step in my and our journey, and we continued to grow in a way that we needed new space, and it was fun to have his great mind as we planned our new center also. And then this fellowship that, I had doctors, coming and doing, mini fellowships with me, 1 month, 3 months. I had a fellow spend a year from Turkey with me, but I never formalized it. And what was great about getting bigger and being able to formalize the fellowship and John was just so instrumental in that. It brought some of the most amazing surgeons that were in training to our training program, our kind of front of the eye fellowship that focused on cataract and refractive and glaucoma and cornea, and a year long of developing a relationship that was like family.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget Dr. Greenwood, who's now in Fargo, finishing our fellowship and wanting to join us, and we're like, you're amazing. He really wanted to go back to North Dakota, and why don't you go look at your opportunities up there? And he did, and he came back and he said, I still would really like to be a part of VTV. Could we consider VTV Fargo? And we had never imagined growing past our one center.
Right.
But it was Mike who had the desire and the vision to, start VTV in other places. And so we started that journey, and now, at this moment in time, we're in 7 centers and working with amazing surgeons and amazing optometrists and amazing business leaders that are surrounded by a team that now is over 400 people. And so it's been fun to have a front row seat to watch that growth.
Yeah, it's amazing just to be a little microcosm of the chapter as well. Switching gears a little bit, let's ask some fun questions. If you weren't an ophthalmologist, you mentioned you were going to dabble in business at one point in time. If you weren't an ophthalmologist, what would you be?
Well, when I was a junior in high school and all my buddies, I was just really starting to think about what am I going to be on the long run. They have ranches and farms that they're a part of, and my early jobs were doing that, and I know I would have really loved that, to tell you the truth. I'll never forget telling my father my junior year of high school, Dad, I don't think I'm going to go to college. I think I want to be a farmer. And so I blinked, and I was on a combine crew. And he had called one of our friends who was a custom combiner, and they invited me to cut wheat. And so I cut wheat that summer between my junior and senior year of high school, from Texas all the way to North Dakota. And I did a lot of thinking. I got home that end of that summer to start football my senior year, all excited. And I said, Dad, I think I'm going to go to college. And it was obvious that I wasn't going to have a farm or a ranch that was going to come my way, and that maybe it was best I further my education. But if I wasn't, a doctor, I would have considered something along those lines in the ag business. But I also love just caring for people, and I didn't do a lot of thinking about what else I would do. I do remember getting a degree in chemistry, thinking if I don't get in to medical school, I could go on and be a chemistry teacher or something like that. I think I would have loved teaching, and I still do love teaching.
Yeah, you do. Most people probably know this, or maybe they do, that you are a drummer and like to drum.
Yeah.
Where did that happen?
Well, that happened ever since I was a little boy. Even the second grade Christmas program, I got to play the drum as we did the Little Drummer Boy, and so as I got into band and jazz band and symphony, and I really worked hard at drum. I still drum.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people, you don't want to buy a car from a drummer, because at the stoplights they're usually hitting it, and you can see the little dents all over. And but I still love drumming. I remember that conversation that I told you about in the 8th grade, when I said to my mom, I someday want to live in Sioux Falls. I told her, you'll know I've made it when I live in Sioux Falls and I have my own Suburban and my own drum set. And I have all three now, by the way. So
You made
I've
it.
made it, yeah.
I love
it. But I was angling for a drum set, but she knew I could use the school's drum set. But I love music, and I love the arts a lot. I had the honor of being on our symphony's board here and helping with some of that, and I had the honor of two presidential appointments to the Kennedy Center in Washington. So I've participated in the arts there a lot. I just feel like that's one of God's great gifts to us, is the arts. And so when I see a great drummer or a great percussionist, it's something that moves me tremendously.
Yeah, God does have a way of imparting his gifts and instilling them in others. Tugging on the music line of questioning, favorite concert or most memorable concert that you've ever been to?
I have a hard time figuring out what would be the most memorable, because I just am so moved by music. I remember, when my mother would take us to all these different concerts, because she was someone who danced professionally, interpretive dance, jazz dance, back in the 50s and 60s, when that was a really big deal. She danced, in Hollywood, on TV.
Wow.
And so she had quite a career happening for her. So she would love taking us to things. But I remember when the musical Jesus Christ Superstar came to Sioux Falls in the 70s, and we drove from Gregory to watch that, and how much that moved me, and that started my love of musicals and Broadway, and even to this day, I love seeing that as an example of team, how they work so hard, and in the beginning, things are kind of clunky, and there's frustrations, but there's passions that lead over time to this beautiful product that is a play or a concert, and then at the end, how they've moved the crowd and the applause, and how they're moved, and I actually love music so much that I study rock documentaries as an example of team building, and how these great groups in our world moved so many people because they practiced a lot together. They believed in each other. The sum was greater than the parts. But then someone in some of those groups started thinking it was about them. And then something kind of icky starts to enter the team when someone starts thinking that it's about them. And then they start thinking, could I make better music with a different band, or doing something on my own? And the vast majority of times, they go on to do something that wasn't as good as the team they were blessed with. And so I use the same thing that, in any team, that it's really about, being willing to lead or being willing to follow, to do what is best for the team and caring about the whole. And that's what makes a great team to me. People who love being a part of it, have a positive attitude, treat each other kindly, smile, eye contact, those things our parents taught us that do matter. I call that, the power of you. A lot of people don't realize the power they have to make someone's day better. When I'm at work and someone goes by and they're smiling, their eye contact makes my day better. And so, but it's amazing to me how music and the arts have played a role in my philosophy on team building.
You definitely can see that day in and day out at our practice, in the sense that the sum is greater than each of the parts or each of the individuals, and it does take a village, and it does take each of those roles to make us better. How do you strike? You have a lot of passions, the arts, the music. I know hunting is one of your passions, winemaking. How do you find that balance between your work passions, your life passions, and family?
Well, this world is so interesting, isn't it? I mean, there's just so much about it that is just so fun. And so you know how when you grow up doing certain things, kind of fall in love with them, or they have a special meaning. And so the outdoors has meant a lot to me. So my father grew up, in the 40s and 50s, and so he was a good communicator, but not someone to just sit down and talk with me at night, about how my day was. But when we would go out hunting or fishing, and you'd spend 8 hours in a boat or a goose pit, you talk.
Yep.
And it's kind of really how I got to know him, the best. And so I fell in love with the outdoors. And to me, it's not even so much about the game. Yes, I love catching a fish, and I love, getting a pheasant. I love being with my dog, but it's just the fresh air, and it's I in particular, the plains of South Dakota, the river hills that border the Missouri River and make the topography so interesting, are spiritual to me. And so I do have a very fond love of the outdoors, and I spend a lot of time out there, and my family does too. And so that's kind of where that started from my childhood. As far as some of my hobbies, my parents were both gourmet chefs. They both loved the kitchen. And a lot of our socializing happened, around the kitchen. And so they taught us how to cook, and they taught us how to appreciate things like wine, and to not overdo it, but consider it as an extension of food, and how does it complement it. And so getting involved in the wine business was something that happened just kind of naturally and organically also. But I love studying ways to touch people's lives, and cooking someone a nice meal, inviting them over for dinner. They'll never see the bottom of their water glass. One of my favorite jobs was being a waiter, and I love waiting on people, and so cooking them a meal or taking care of them in medicine. These are all ways to serve each other that really move me.
Just an extension of that servant heart that you have.
Yeah.
Well, I like to end my segments with a fun game called This or That. Ready?
Yes.
Okay. This or that: big game hunting, small game hunting, or waterfowl hunting?
Well, I consider waterfowl small game, but I'm a bird hunter.
Bird hunter. Okay. Cabernet or Merlot?
Both. I feel like we age Cabernet to taste like Merlot. Those tannins, the part that brings the bitter aspect that we get in coffee or a good wine, become more rounded or velvety with Merlot. So it's kind of a mood and food thing, but definitely both.
Gotcha. Coffee or Diet Coke?
Coffee.
Nice. Puns or dad jokes?
Well, I consider them kind of one and the same, and it's one of the reasons there is one big difference. So a dad joke is something that can circulate and entertain a lot of people.
Yep.
At least to us dads, we think that. And a pun to me is typically something that's in the moment. I absolutely love puns, but usually they're a one and done.
One and
thing,
done. Yep.
And that's why people will buy me pun books, and I just am not fascinated with them. Dad jokes books I'm fascinated with. But puns to me are a real live, breathing thing that happens in the moment.
Yeah. If you were a superhero and you could have time travel or teleportation, what would you have?
I would do teleportation. So I love living in the moment, and I love the world that we live in. And yes, there's problems, but there's so much good. And so to be able to teleport to different parts of this world, or to be, with one of my children, just boom, just like that. That's what I would want to do.
Steak or seafood?
Seafood.
Nice. And then classic country or classic rock?
By the way, can I go back to steak and seafood?
Yeah.
Both.
Both, yep. We can play this game any way we want to.
Yes, it just was, kind of what am I hungry for at the moment. But I saw a lobster. But both, definitely both. I love steak and seafood.
Is there a food you don't like?
Well, I'm not a big fan of okra.
Oh.
It's kind of snotty,
Yes.
and I don't think the taste is that amazing, but I challenge someone to make me a good okra.
There we go. Okay, last one. Classic country or classic rock?
Classic. I love classic rock.
Nice. Well, this has been a fabulous journey walking down memory lane with you today. We appreciate your time and thank you for this interview.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.